সকলকে আবারও আমন্ত্রণ ক্রিমিনাল জাস্টিস প্রোগ্রাম দেখবার জন্য। আমি সলিসিটর শাফিউল আজম এবং আমার সাথে আছেন আমার কলিগ ব্যারিস্টার লিন টাউনলি। লিন, this is quite important, the forced marriage, honor based violence, yeah, and then if you can give some practical the definition of forced marriage and definition of the honor based crime, if you can just explain section by section in a bit by bit way. Just to make it simpler.
Yes. The definition of an honour crime, it's a crime or an instance, so it has to be something, to be a crime, it's something that's reported to the police and recorded as a crime. But it also includes things that aren't necessarily reported as crimes. They can still be considered to be honour-based violence, even though they're perhaps not dealt with through the courts, but for other purposes. For example, if a local authority have basically got an interest in a family, if there are issues around a family or a child, for example, that's something that the local authority will take account of, the fact that there have been incidents, even if they're not actually crimes as such that have been reported. It's something which has or may have been committed to protect or defend the honour of the family or the community. So there are certain families and certain wider communities that operate a particular code of honour, whether it's something that is talked about in an open way or even understood to be such. There are certain codes of honour which operate, and what that means it's certain codes of behaviour. For example, for women and sometimes even to an extent for men, the way that people dress and appear in public. For example, wearing a particular kind of dress or doing particular things. For example, a female who speaks with a man who's not a family member can sometimes be considered to be a transgression of particular honour codes in certain communities and for certain families. Going out dressed what's considered inappropriately. For example, not being appropriately covered or having head or hair covered can also be a transgression. And other things as well. For example, pursuing education, going to school, driving a car in some cases, or doing other things that family members or members of the community don't want someone to do. And certain types of sexuality or sexual preference. For example, appearing to be, say, a transsexual person, openly appearing to be so, or having a certain sexual preference, such as homosexuality, for example, or being in that type of relationship with another person can also be deemed as a transgression of the Code of Honour. It's quite wide, and it really depends down to what the actual particular community or family would look at as a transgression, and it varies between communities. But it centres around shame, or sometimes known as ISAT. The women tend to be the carriers and the keepers of the honour, and the men tend to, in a very traditional way that it works, then tend to be the enforcers, as it were, to ensure that the women maintain the honour. And where the difficulty comes with that, there can be benefits to being honourable and having an honour code, but the difficulty with it is that the punishment for a breach of the honour code or what is perceived by certain families and communities as has to be done in order to resurrect honour that's been lost, can often result in violence, and that's usually directed towards the person who is in breach of the honour code. And where that becomes problematic, for example, is that if a woman is raped within certain communities, the shame is on the woman rather than on the perpetrator. So what can happen there is that the woman, in fact, is punished within the community rather than the perpetrator. And the woman is the one who's perceived as having broken the honour code, particularly if, for example, that rape or sexual offence is reported publicly or reported to the authorities. So it can also mean that people reporting honour-based crimes, for example, can also be at risk once the matter is reported through to the authorities, because that in itself can be viewed as a breach of the honour code or a transgression.
There are a lot of examples of this honour crime. The optimum level is the even murder. People been even killed because their daughter in the family, she went out of their religion, out of their caste, getting married outside the without the family consent, and then family became very aggressive and took the revenge.
Yes, so it's a lot of the examples of the honour-based crimes that have been prosecuted in the UK tend to centre around disapproved of relationships or marriages. It can be because someone is marrying outside of the religion or the community, but equally it can be that they marry within their own religion and community, but that it's disapproved of by the family, and it's essentially that they defy the wishes of the family and go ahead with their own choices in terms of lifestyle, the way they live their life and the relationships that they choose. So it's often around controlling someone's behaviour. And the way that things are moving as regards how these crimes are dealt with and thought about, yes, there is a subset of a crime that has to recognise the honour code that lies behind it, but they're more and more being thought of as falling within what is referred to as coercive or controlling behaviour. And that has in recent years been made a specific criminal offence, and quite a lot of this behaviour, whilst it may fall within the honour-based violence definition and may in appropriate cases involve a forced marriage as well, it will often fall under the umbrella of what is coercive and controlling type behaviour as well.
You have been writing various articles about the honour crime, honour-based violence, and you are expert in this field, but did you see this type of offences, because you are expert also, I understand that you've been called to the court to give evidence also on occasions in a big type of honour crimes. Now, what do you think within the Bengali, Pakistani, in Indian, this continent, is it more within this continent, subcontinent, or?
With the way that the communities tend to be set up in the South Asian subcontinent, most of the offences that we've seen within the UK and Europe, not exclusively, but most of them have involved these communities. It's not that certain practices are only the practice, for example, of honour violence is only practice in South Asian communities, but why we see more of them from these communities in the UK and Europe is because the diaspora communities within the UK, which tend to be largest, are certainly South Asian ones. There have also been a considerable number of cases in proportion to the population.
And there is an
of
example
Kurdish,
of
Kurdish,
murder also, I think.
Yes, well, I mean, we're talking about communities then, different types of crimes. So we tend to have here, and it is because the South Asian diaspora community is one of the largest diaspora communities in the UK. So that's part of the reason why we have more examples from this community, but it's not solely from there. We've got, for example, communities that have come to the UK from Iraqi Kurdistan. There's been at least 2 murders there that have been said to be honour related. As regards the type of offences, that's a separate consideration. Honour-based violence just talks about offences of violence. So it essentially, it can be any offence of violence. It doesn't have to be a particular offence. The actual definition comes from the fact that the violence is a result of someone having perceived a breach of family honour. But the types of things that we can see, the types of offences, starting out with things like common assault, going right up, as you have said, right up to and including murder. Yes. So it's a wide range of violent offences and related offences. Other ones too, harassment can be one, stalking can be one. Other non-violent offences, but offences against property, for example, criminal damage, could come within the definition. There could be a wide range of criminal conduct that would fit within the definition, because the definition isn't necessarily offence specific, but it comes in as regards whether the offence itself has been committed due to the surrounding issue of a perceived breach of honour by the person who's being victimised.
So is it the thing that the daughter is gone outside their boundary, that means community, and going out with another, for example, Jewish man, she been raised in a Muslim family in a traditional Muslim way, and that is the way the honor affects?
It can
or
do.
Other ways also?
Well, it can do, but it's not the only way. Going completely outside the community can have the effect of perhaps leading people to be involved in crimes, because that can be perceived and often is perceived as a breach of the general codes of honour, particularly if a family operates an arranged marriage procedure. But there've also been examples, and in some cases it's probably considered to be worse if, for example, and you use the example of a daughter, it could equally be a son who goes outside of the parameters of what the family would want to arrange, so refuses an arranged marriage, for example, and then marries a partner of choice, but it could be a partner of choice who was perhaps even a family member, extended family member, or from the same community and the same religion. But the fact is more down to it's going against an arrangement that someone wants. And arranged marriages can be and are perfectly acceptable and good things and work. And arranged marriages have been around forever and in all cultures. But where it actually crosses over into being potentially unlawful and illegal is when there's the introduction of coercion or duress. So it's not the person's own will. So basically the code of honour as around marriage is broken really because someone goes in their own direction, makes their own choice, and that choice is against the choice that the family would want to make for that person. Mm. And again, the family might not even perceive that what's going on is wrong, or that they are actually interfering with someone's choice, because quite often they have had the same choice made for them, and didn't question it at the time, and they're just carrying on a tradition. But the violation of the honour code, it's not so much what the actual specific choice is at the end of the day, but it's the fact that the person makes their own choice against what the family want that person to do, and the choice that the family or the community want to make for that person.
But it's quite wide-ranging area, isn't it? It's lot of things happening. So you are saying even if the boy marries someone outside their religion without the consent of the family, that can also be coming within the honor code.
It depends on what the result of that is, but there have been cases that have resulted in violent actions taking place as a result of that type of scenario. So it again, it can be triggered by a son, for example, again disobeying or going against a particular family choice. So a choice around a marriage partner, so refusing essentially a marriage partner, refusing to go along with that choice and making a different choice, then that might well lead to acts of violence which would then consequently fall within the definition of honour-based violence.
দর্শক আপনারা শুনছেন ব্যারিস্টার লিন টাউনলির কাছে। উনি কিন্তু এক্সপার্ট আপনার অনার বেসড ভায়োলেন্স এবং অনার ক্রাইমের উপরে বিভিন্ন সময় উনি বিভিন্ন কোর্টের মধ্যে আপনার ওপিনিয়ন দেন। এটা অনেক সময় মানে লয়াররা ওনার ওপিনিয়ন এটা সাবমিট করে কোর্টের মধ্যে। অনেক ধরনের অনার ক্রাইমের এক্সাম্পল আছে। উনি যেটা বলছিলেন যে অ্যাসল্ট, অ্যাবিহেজ, জিবিহেজ থেকে শুরু করে মার্ডার পর্যন্ত হতে পারে অনার ক্রাইম। So it's very serious matter. You will come back to that topic again in the next segment. আমরা শর্ট একটা ব্রেকে যাচ্ছি, ব্রেকের পরে আমরা আবার ফিরে আসব। আমি সলিসিটর শাফিউল আজম এবং আমার সাথে আছেন আমার কলিগ ব্যারিস্টার লিন টাউনলি। সবাই আমাদের সাথে থাকুন।